Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to South Kesteven District Council Planning Committee meeting, 1st of June 2023. I'm Councillor David Bellamy. I'm chairing this meeting today. I'm not aware of any fire drills today, so if the fire alarm does sound, please leave the building by the nearest exit, and the assembly point is on the green out the front of the building. Please can everyone make sure that their phones are turned off to silent, please, and please be aware that this meeting is being recorded live and live streamed via Public Eye on the South Kesteven website. Can you ensure that your microphones are turned off, please, when you're not speaking, councillors? With me today I have Assistant Director of Planning Emma Whittaker, Principal Planning Officer Adam Murray, Planning Officer Anna Nooch, Legal Services Arva Jackson, and Democratic Services Amy Pride. Public speakers and ward councillors, please be aware that you have 3 minutes to speak, and you will be advised when you've got 30 seconds left. You may finish the sentence but not start another paragraph, although I think we've only got one speaker today. So, the list of speakers today are, we've only got one planning agenda item, which is S22/2052, and speaking against is it Ken Otter on behalf of Shirley Taylor, I believe, is that correct? Okay, thank you, Mr. Otter. That's the only speaker. Yep. And sorry about that, 2 speakers, and the applicant, Kevin Barwell. Thank you. Can we have apologies for absence, please, Amy? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Vanessa Smith, Councillor Emma Baker, Councillor Paul Wood and Councillor Charmaine Morgan, and Councillor Helen Crawford will be substituting for Councillor Paul Wood. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Does anyone have any disclosure of interest for consideration? If you believe you have at any point in the meeting, please let the chairman know. Thank you. Item 3 on is minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of April 2023. Could we have a proposer, please, for the minutes, or has anybody got any comments on the minutes?
I propose, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, thank you, Harish. Could we have a seconder, please, obviously of the people that were present at that meeting? Councillor Milnes is seconded. Thank you. So obviously the only people that can vote on the minutes are the people that were present at that meeting. So all those in favour of the minutes, please raise your hand. Yes, those minutes are passed as accurate. Thank you. Right, we move to the main agenda. Item 4, application S22/2052, and doing the presentation is Anna Nooch. Over to you, Anna, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Application S22/2052 is for the erection of a detached dwelling to the rear of 54 Bainton Road in Tallington. The key issues raised within this application are the impact on the character and appearance of the area, the impact on neighbours' residential amenities, and high-rise impacts. This slide shows the site location plan. You'll see the red outline outlining the application site, and there's a blue outline outlining land belonging to 54 Bainton Road. So to the north of the red line is Herons Close, the private road where the site is accessed, and to the east is Bainton Road, where the access to Herons Close is from. To the south are the properties on Church Lane. This photograph shows the entrance to Herons Close from Bainton Road. So that was to the east, of that site plan that I just showed you. This photograph is taken opposite the application site, showing the site access to the application site. It is an existing access and would become a shared access for number 54 Bainton Road and the proposed dwelling. This slide is a side view from Herons Close of the application site, and you'll see in the background the bungalow. That's number 1 Herons Close for reference. This photograph shows the canal lock that has been subject to some of the representations on the application. The historic canal lock is opposite the application site. This slide shows the proposed block plan. So the proposed dwelling is the drawing which has the annotations for the rooms on the plan. So it is a 2-storey dwelling with a 2-storey rear projection and then a single-storey rear projection. You'll be able to see that there is proposed parking for both the application site with the 3 car parking spaces that are facing downwards, and then there's also car parking proposed to be retained for 54 Bainton Road. That's also on the plan. The plan also includes cycling provision for parking, which is adjacent the car parking spaces as well. So just for reference, to the left-hand side of that plan is where number 1 Herons Close is. To the right-hand side, the nearest neighbour is 4 Piccadilly Cottages, and to the rear, the closest neighbour, I believe it's Meadowview. So this slide shows the proposed floor plans and the proposed elevation plans. So these plans are the amended scheme following discussions with the applicant over the original scheme not being acceptable. So these amendments were submitted and are now considered to be acceptable. In terms of the changes from the plans, on the rear elevation in the top right-hand corner, you'll be able to see the proposed rear elevation. There is 1 window showing on that elevation, and that is to be obscure glazed. There was previously another window on the 2-storey rear projection, but that has been removed. There's also a proposed street view elevation on that slide below the front and rear elevations, which shows the proposed height would be in line with the adjacent dwelling at 7.3 metres to the highest point. In terms of the evaluation, it's considered that the dwelling would be of appropriate scale for the plot and would be considered to be an infill plot in line with policy SP3 of the SKDC local plan. The design and height of the amended scheme is considered to now be in keeping with the built form in the area. It's considered that there's acceptable separation from the neighbouring properties, and there would be no windows that would directly overlook neighbours in each direction. It's considered that there's adequate parking and turning facilities provided, and that there would be no impact on the canal lock. Therefore, my recommendation is for the committee to authorise the Assistant Director of Planning to grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Now we'll move on to our public speakers. Mr. Otto, could you come up to the front, please? No, it's just can you just show the gentleman, please, Anna? Thank you. Yes, that's fine, yeah. Hold on. Can you just put your speak on, please? It's the cream-coloured button, I think it is. That's it. You've got 3 minutes, Mr. Otter. We'll tell you when you've got 30 seconds left. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Ken Otter. I came today to answer questions on behalf of Mrs. Taylor, who is with me, the owner of the Meadows, not Meadowview, one of the 4 properties this application affects. We're sorry to take up your time, as we thought this application was for a bungalow, as was promised and would have been acceptable. I came to explain our objection to this application, but I can't. Certainly not in 3 minutes. When the application was made, we were asked for comments, and I spent a long time analysing the application form and submitted 6 A4 pages of comments and a similar number of photographs. When changes were made, we commented on them. Where are they? You certainly haven't got them in your pack, so you wouldn't have a clue what I would be talking about. They never went on the website with the other comments, even after I rang and complained. I thought this was supposed to be a public and professional appraisal of all of the facts, but you only have half of the information in front of you. Without the carefully documented comments that I submitted, you cannot possibly make a balanced judgment here today. The danger we now see is that you may be tempted to rubber stamp the recommendation rather than see it go to appeal. From the glowing officer's report, even I would sanction it. But at what long-term damage? So what can you do now? A simple site visit with a copy of those documents and photographs will give you a clear understanding of the damage this application will and has caused. A hedge and a beautiful huge red cedar was chopped down the day before the application went in. They'd read the notes on the application form. The stump is still there, in the middle of the car park, so you will be able to see it. An early morning visit will show the effect on the other 3 properties, the 300-year-old almshouses. They have enjoyed the early morning sunshine for all of that time as the sun rises from the east, not the south as in your brief. If you allow this property to be built, they will never see the sun rise again. I believe this needs to be a full committee decision, so it's up to you. Please don't blame your officer. On behalf of the Herons Trust, who manage the almshouses now, but was originally chaired by my predecessor, Joseph Otter, when they were first built in the early 1700s.
Mr. Otter, your time's up, sorry.
And Mrs. Taylor, thank you.
Thank you very much. Emma would like to make a comment, please. Emma, over to you, please.
Thank you, councillors. You'll see in the report that the representations have been summarised. That's perfectly typical and normal. We don't publish the full letters on the website. They are available on the public file, but we don't publish on the website, but we summarise them. They're covered off in the officer's report. So members, you do have enough information to make the decision. A site visit was also carried out yesterday, I believe it was, so any members that were on that site visit, I'm sure will be happy to share their thoughts about the proposals, what they learnt from that site visits and the relationship between the proposed dwelling and the neighbouring properties. Happy to deal with anything else, but I think I just wanted to clarify that the comments are and the objections are covered in section 6 on page 34 of the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Bisnausing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask questions to the Assistant Director. Were we aware that the trees that have just been mentioned?
Yeah, Arish, can we just hold on to that a little minute? Have we got any questions for the speaker so that we can move on? Councillor Mark Whittington, please.
Yeah, thanks. The almshouses, are they a listed building? Thank you.
Sorry, not now, because the 3 original almshouses have been replaced with more modern buildings. The listed buildings are beyond that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Otter. We'll move on to our next speaker, which is the applicant, Mr. Kevin Barwell, please. got 3 minutes, Mr. Barwell. Thank you.
Good afternoon all. My name is Kevin Barwell. Not to further repeat what's already been discussed from Hannah's report, I'd just like to highlight the plan for the dwelling should permission be granted. Construction will always bring a certain element of noise and creation of dust, but we intend to minimise this by using a SIPS build method to reduce overall noise and time in the build, with most of it constructed off-site. The SIPS build company that we have sourced use sustainable, environmentally friendly materials. With the nature of today's climate and increasing energy costs, and most importantly environmental impact, we intend to use an air heat source boiler. To reduce consumption of electricity from the national grid, we also intend to fit solar panels onto the roof of the dwelling to help towards the environment. The system we intend to use will have a battery system in place to help use the energy generated during the day and through the night. To continue with our mindfulness and eagerness to educate our 2 young children in environmental impact, we are looking to install recycle wastewater units alongside the low-flow toilets, shower heads and faucets. This will not only cut down water usage, it will further add to the house being environmentally friendly. We're keen to showcase that a new build, low-impact house can fit into its surroundings and be economical, helping to shape the future of new builds. Every part of this build, from the roof to the kitchen cabinets, will be crafted by using eco-friendly and renewable materials, helping us to reduce our carbon footprint where possible. The reasoning behind wanting to build this house is simply for more space. The house we currently reside in has been stretched to its limits. I'm sure most would like to build a house their own way, and that suits their own needs, and our dream is no different. With having the surplus land at the back of our property, it became a venture to hopefully build something that suits our current lifestyle. We have lived in Tallington for over 5 years now, and are keen to stay in the village. Our young children attend a local preschool, and one due to start full-time education this coming September. So staying local is important for us to keep them settled, staying within the village. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Any questions to the speaker? Councillor Crawford, please.
Thank you. So you own 54 Bainton, and then this is land that is backed onto there, is it? Yes. Yeah. Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Questions to the speaker, Arish, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Barwell, for your presentations. And as you really painted a very good picture of what compliance with the climate change, will it be possible for you to also consider including like solar panels and also recycling the grey water systems in the building?
That's what he said, Harris.
Sorry, no, I mean, grey water is an option. From my understanding, I think you have to have a septic tank placed into the ground. I don't really know the ins and outs. It's not really my thing. But I'm open to ideas. Obviously, we're keen for eco-friendly. But solar panels is definite. And we are looking to use rainwater harvesting. So.
Councillor Gadd, please.
Could I just ask, obviously there's trees and hedges, and there's been an issue whether the tree was there previously or not, and you're going to do some replanting, I understand, after that. Will that hedge be replaced, and is there any sort of mitigation for any wildlife issue, you know, bat boxes or any bird boxes? I know that's not an issue, but is there something that you could do for that?
So the tree that Mr. Otter referenced was actually, it was dying on one side. So the reason it got took down was mostly because it was going to fall down. It wasn't actually took down, it was took down in the May, and our application was put in way after that. So his is incorrect. We would be looking to replace the hedge line that was put in. It was mostly weeds, possibly, which is why we removed it. The wall that is currently there will obviously come down, and a new one put up with a new flower bed hedge line put in front and surrounding. Bird boxes, definitely. My 2 children love birds.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Barwell. Yeah, you can go back to you. So now, Harris, you had a question. I think Emma would like to answer the question you asked.
We can certainly try to, but if you wouldn't mind asking the question again, and then between myself and Hannah, we can answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think part of it has been answered by Mr. Barwell, but I was going to questions the tree that was cut down prior to the applications. what's the state condition the tree was in. Was it a healthy tree? And I just would like to know why cut the tree that is got more than 7-inch girth.
Thank you, Councillor. With regards to the tree, with that being removed before the application, that doesn't actually form part of the proposal. And the tree was not in a conservation area and it wasn't protected, so they wouldn't have needed our consent to remove that tree. However, we have put a condition on the application, on the recommendation for approval for landscaping, for details to be provided prior to everything being implemented of what landscaping would be happening on the site, and that would include any replacement planting or anything like that. So that's something we can see before the landscaping scheme is approved. Thank you.
And I think just to add to that, the applicant has just indicated that the tree was in poor health, although as the council we can't verify that. That's obviously just to clarify what the applicant's just told you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Williams, just before we move on, just for the benefit of the new members of the committee, what we normally do is ask questions of the officer, and then we move on to debate the application after we've asked the questions of the officer. So now we're moving into the phase where we're going to ask the questions. So, Councillor Whittington, please, questions to the officer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, obviously, in the presentation that Hannah gave, we saw that the line going sort of the next door neighbour was on a similar height. So that's, I'm presuming that's the ones on Heron's Close. What are the heights of the 4 properties to the rear that are off Church Lane? Are they of a similar height? Thank you.
I don't have their exact heights because that wasn't something that was submitted as part of the application. I asked for a street scene elevation to demonstrate what the impact of the visual impact would be on the street scene, which is why we've got the height of next door. But directly to the back, the Meadows, that is a dormer bungalow. So it's 2-storey in that it's got the second floor provided by the dormer. And then to the other side, so the mix of the Heron's Close and Church Lane is a mixture of house types, but there is 2-storey dwellings, including the ones adjacent the application site. Thank you.
Councillor Milnes, please.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, but first of all, just moving on from the bungalow to the rear of the plot. I did go on the site visit the day before, unfortunately, but I did walk around and have a good look. I was surprised by the tightness of the site, I have got to say, and the closeness of the bungalow at the rear. I would have thought it's more 1.5 stories than 2. It just has 1 dormer in the roof. I don't know if you have a picture of it that you can show us. I also am not clear that we have a plan showing the spacing between this plot and the bungalow to the rear. And the other thing, I might as well just ask it all at one go, or would you prefer to answer one at a time? Okay.
With regards to the bungalow to the rear, I think it would be a fair assessment at 1.5 storey. Yes, that's a fair judgment to make. It has got the first floor, which is what I was referring to, so apologies for any confusion. In terms of the plan with the measurements, so there is a block plan indicating the measurement to the rear boundary, which is, I think, 7.1 metres from the single-storey element, but I have scaled it, and it's 14.5 metres from the rear of the Meadows to the nearest 2-storey section of the house to the rear. So that would be in line with our guidelines for a window to be facing a blank elevation. So that would meet our guidelines as per the South Kesteven and Rutland design guidelines.
Sorry, could you just explain those guidelines for the benefit of everybody, please? 14.5 between 2 rear elevations, because there is a window, isn't there, in the bathroom? I know is it a bathroom? And it's opaque. But it is still a higher elevation. I just wondered if you could explain for all of us, please, what these guidelines are, because isn't there a 21-metre guideline somewhere?
In terms of the 20 metres, that's where there's two-storey dwellings with windows on the rear facing back to back. So that wouldn't be the case in this instance. So the 14 metres I'm referring to is in our guidelines. If there's a window that would be facing a blank elevation, we recommend that it be 14 metres or more away. I'm aware that there is that window in the bathroom, but we have conditioned that to be obscure glazed. And if anything, that section where that window is, that's even further back than the 14 metres. So that 14.5 metres that I gave you is to the two-storey rear projection that's proposed on the dwelling, and then the main body of the dwelling is set further back. I don't unfortunately have that exact measurement, but it's going to be greater than the 14.5 metres. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor?
Can I move on with a couple of other questions? Is
yes,
that all right?
please do.
Is anybody else keen to interfere?
Yep.
I was also concerned the tightness of the site and the available amenity area for a three-bedroom family home. The parking on the site is on the rear boundary. The bungalow in question, which I think is the Meadows, is quite tight onto that boundary. I don't think there's an awful lot of room. I just wondered about noise and disturbance with that, and the amenity area available, and just going back to the street scene, the apex, the front design of the property really doesn't fit with the roof styles on either side. I thought in our design guidance they were meant to complement.
So in terms, on your first point with regards to the amenity space, so to the this side of Bainton Road in Herons Close, it is the character of the area is that they do have very small amenity spaces, and they are quite small plots with regards to that. So it would not be out of keeping with the dwellings in the area. If you were to look at the Piccadilly cottages that are adjacent to the site, they have very small amounts of amenity space. But in terms of the proposal, there is amenity space, and also it's considered that there is, in walking distance, available to the occupiers, there is wider public open space. There's a public footpath that's across Bainton Road that just directly across. So in the wider area and in the village, there would be access to public green space and open space, but there is some amenity space afforded to the proposed dwelling. In terms of the point that you made, I'm sorry, I forgot the second one, but I'll answer the third one, and then if I get you to confirm the second
apex.
Oh, the roof. Yeah. The parking, yeah, okay. So with regards to the parking, so what the application site at the moment is car parking for 54 Bainton Road. So it's not as if there's no access to cars at the moment. So cars, when I did the first site visit, when the application came in, there was cars parked there with regards to that. So it's currently, it can be parked on by the owners and the occupiers of 54 Bainton Road. So it wouldn't be introducing that as a new element to an area that hadn't had car parking already, and so my assessment is that the level of increase from the proposed dwelling of the 3 car parking spaces would not be such that would be detrimental compared to the current usage. With regards to the roof, there is no distinct character to this part of Herons Close with regards to the roof. There's a hipped roof to the Piccadilly cottages, and then there's a pitched roof across the road on Herons Close where the canal lock is. If you were to stand in the application site and look that way, you can see the rear of a property that's got the gable, a gable facing the application site, and then there's also the dormer bungalow to the rear. So it's very varied in terms of design. So I think it'd be fair to say that there's not one distinct character in terms of roof with regards to Herons Close. That would if there was, that might be something that we would recommend them to do. Thank you.
Emma, please.
Thanks, Hannah. That was very comprehensive. If I could just add a couple of points to draw your attention to the site plan on page 32. We obviously do need to consider the amount of amenity space, but we don't have a specific standard that says you must provide X amount of amenity space per dwelling size. And the point that I think you just need to be mindful of is if you look at that site location plan, you can see that, as Hannah's already said, there's the prevailing character is actually for very small gardens within those properties. So it's a matter of judgment as to whether or not there is enough, but whether or not amenity space, but whether or not the dwelling fits in with that prevailing character, which, in my opinion and Hannah's opinion, it obviously does. The only thing I wanted to also draw your attention to is a question about the windows in the rear elevation. And as Hannah's correctly pointed out, there is a condition requiring that window to be obscure glazed. There's also condition 11 on your papers, which I draw your attention to, removes permitted development rights for extensions, and that would include the provision of any additional windows in the property, just to extra protection there for the neighbours at the rear. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Any other questions?
If I could just come back on the street scene. I was actually talking about the immediate surroundings, the houses here and the bungalow there, those roof styles, and then you've got the apex sticking in the middle. So I just thought that was slightly out of character there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mills. Councillor Bisnarty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Anna. And thank you, Councillor Mills, for some of the questions. I was a bit concerned. Some of the questions has been answered. Furthermore, still worried with, if you'd like to put the block plan on the screen, please, of the development. Yeah. This one. The next one. No, the next one. That one, yeah. Looking at it, the top left-hand corner, looking at the top-hand corner, that is a bit that should be facing the bungalows that is at the back. The first floor of that, yeah, it is there. That will be at the moment is designed in such a way so it just fit in the little square, avoiding the fences that is there. What is there to stop it that this further later, that application be put in for that to be increased to a second floor to be added to that, yeah, and also expanded, like obviously everybody.
I think that's just been answered, Arish, because the permitted development rights have been removed.
But it's not conditioned as such.
So just to clarify, it's condition 11 in the recommendation, removes permitted development rights for provisions under Schedule 2, Part 1, Class A of the General Permitted Development Order, and that relates to any enlargements, improvements or other alterations. So they would need to apply for planning permission for any extension at that first floor space, or any other alterations to the property for that matter. And then that would be a matter for us to consider at the time whether it's appropriate. It's not to say a modest extension wouldn't be appropriate, but that would be a decision for another day. They certainly have no, if granted in line with this recommendation, would have no permitted development rights that they could exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Can you put your microphone on, please, Councillor Bisnarty? Thank you.
Thank you. Just I lost my page. It's on page 30. Yes. On paragraph 7.6.5 at the bottom where it says that unacceptable extent of the compromised amenity space of the occupiers, therefore permitted development rights relating to the extension of outbuildings are recommended to be removed by condition. So that is not in perpetuity. I take it it's just temporary for this time. So in 5 years' time down the road, it could apply to extend it.
No, if granted, And if your decision today, members, is to approve subject to the conditions as recommended by the officers or any other conditions that are reasonable to be added, but if you add that condition stays in perpetuity unless and until such a point that the applicant has made an application under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act to vary or remove that condition. And then at that point we would consider whether it's still appropriate to retain the condition. So the condition stays put forever until we make another decision, if it's ever applied for, to remove that condition in the future. That doesn't stop the future owner of the property from applying for planning permission. What it's stopping is them exercising their permitted development rights, and permitted development rights are those development rights that have already been granted planning permission by virtue of the development order. So typically your conservatories, porches, new windows, modest extensions, but in certain circumstances such as this where you've got a tight plot, it is entirely appropriate to remove those rights. We're not saying to the owner you can't extend, you're saying you need to ask for planning permission to extend, because we've got some concerns about you just extending the property. We need to consider whether that's appropriate, and that's a decision for another day. So it wouldn't remove the condition, it just means they've got to go through that route of applying for planning permission. So we would need to fully consider that, consult the neighbours, and then reach a decision. Hopefully that's clear.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Gadd, please.
Just going on to the permitted conditions, I'm conscious that the bungalow, the house at 54 has a garage at the moment, and that where the 3 parking spots are, back onto, actually, it looks like the conservatory in the dormer building at the back. And I know that we can preclude development, that if they wanted to build a bungalow, we've put that in the conditions. But does that also preclude an open barn type structure that could be above that fence height, which you'd be able to build possibly, and would they, so you could actually still get a garage in there against that fence where the conservatory is at the back? Is that possible?
So that's a really good question. So if you go to condition 10, which is on page 42, that removes the permitted development rights for Class E, and Class E are essentially those outbuildings, whether they are sheds, garages, open carports, whatever that is. So that would be covered under condition 10.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Crawford, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I haven't seen anywhere where the actual build is going to go on the plot site. So is it going to line up with 1 Herons Close or 4? I would like to know where it's going to be positioned on the site. Thank you.
So if you just have a look on your screen at the moment, unfortunately it doesn't include the full extent of number 1 Herons Close, but to the left-hand side of your screen, you'll just be able to see a right angle. So that is number 1 Herons Close. And then next to that, next on the other side of the proposed dwelling, is number 4 Piccadilly Cottages. So it will be set further back. Yes, yeah.
Councillor Milnes, is this a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we did hear from the speaker about light from the east being blocked by this development. Can you explain that, please, and show us on the plans exactly what that means?
So you'll be able to see from this plan the application site. So the property, the Meadows, is to the south of the application site, and to the east is where number 54 Bainton Road is. So the light to the east, other than from to the northeast, for a short amount of the day, that would not impact on their property.
No, sorry, forgive me, I might be confused, but I thought it was the impact of the sunrise from the east onto the property to the west.
So the property, the Meadows, is to the rear. It's to the south of the application site. Oh, so you're talking about with the number 1 Herons Close? Yeah. So that's not what that's not the property that the speaker was talking with regards to. Number 1, Terence Close is to the left, and with regards to that, we don't have the 45-degree line provided, but I have taken a guide from it, and it would be borderline in whether it would fall within that site, but there would be limited anyways. There'd be limited light afforded to the front elevation of that property, which is the only elevation other than the rear that's got a window. There's no windows on the side elevation that would be impacted on the bungalow.
No, but the height on that boundary projecting forwards of that bungalow is what I'm talking about. The impact of that height, the closeness to those windows of the bungalow to the west, and I'm pretty sure that's what the speaker was talking about, not the meadows, but I stand to be corrected, because the new build will project forwards of those properties which are set back.
With regards to which one that the speaker was talking about, I'll just clarify anyway with regards to number 1, Heron's Close. So it's a matter of judgment in terms of whether we think that it would be harmful. So the judgment that I have taken is that the situation forward of that front elevation window in number 1's Heron's Close is not going to be to an extent that's unacceptable. The 45-degree angle would, it's borderline with regards to whether it would fall within it, but even if it did fall slightly within it, I would still be taking the view that it's not acceptable, given that we don't have the exact measurement of the centre of that adjacent window, so I can't give you a complete accurate guide of the 45-degree line, but it's my judgment that it's not it is acceptable. Sorry.
I thought the applicant should provide you with those details on the application. Is that not correct?
Not necessarily at the time of submission. It's upon request if we deem it to be necessary, which in this instance we did not.
Emma, please.
Thank you. I think one of the things that you have to think about is any development is going to have an impact on its surroundings. It would almost be impossible for a development not to have an impact, not to have some kind of effect on the character or the neighbouring properties. In this instance, you've got the proposed dwelling sitting forwards of number 1 Heron Close, is it? Which are the properties to the left of the red lines plan as you're looking at the maps here. Obviously, in terms of the sun will rise in the east, it will set in the west, so it's obviously tracking round, and it's sort of going round to the south, but it's also going up and over depending on the time of year. So there will almost certainly be some shadowing caused by the development, because there's going to currently at number 1 benefit from some early morning sun, particularly in the summer months. What Hannah's explained to you is that, in her opinion, having regard to the positioning of the properties and having had regard to the location of the windows on the neighbouring property and the rooms that it's serving, in her opinion, that shadowing, that impact is not unacceptable. And that's the judgment that needs to be made, because any development is going to cast a shadow at some point. It's just whether it causes an unacceptable loss of daylight or sunlight. And in our view, it does not cause an unacceptable impact. But yes, there will be some shadowing caused. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to let Anna stand down now. She's been answering questions for about half an hour. So thank you, Anna. Right, we'll move on to the debate. Does anybody like to comment?
Before we go on to the debate, Hannah, would it be possible do you have any of the Google pictures of the area to actually show? I'm a really bit concerned, probably, the bungalows at the back and the new build, the roof would be slightly higher than those bungalows that is in the back on it. And also it totally will change the spatial amenities of the area there.
I'm not sure we've got access to that information.
Yes, so
Harry,
you'll be able to see. Sorry, you will be able to see the bungalow in the back in this photo that I've got. It's the one with the dormer window set at the back of the site.
Can you put your speaker on, please, Harish?
Councillor Tim, just show a picture from Google, just downloaded just right, showing that the sun is rising, the casting a shadow over the current bungalows as it is. But I would say, putting the building there will be, a shadow cast over the bungalows.
I think we've already established that, Harish. That's what Emma's just been talking about. So.
Can I also just clarify, the date stamp on the Google Maps is 2009. We don't know the time, the date, the weather conditions, so it'd be really dangerous to rely on that. Hannah's visited the site. She may have even visited more than once, but certainly visited the site, and there was a site visit yesterday, and I think Councillor Milnes has visited herself on a subsequent day. So I think what those councillors and what Hannah's seen on her site visit are perhaps a little bit more reliable than Google Earth in this instance.
Okay, we'll move on to thank you, Emma. Move on to the debate. Anybody like to comment? Councillor Milnes?
Shall I start off? I think I said at the beginning, I did do a site visit and walk around. I was very surprised at how small the site is, actually, and the smallness of they're the almshouses, those bungalows to the right of the picture there. The way it projects forwards of those and backwards, and I'm also concerned about all that car parking. I know there were cars on the site when I visited 2 or 3, but obviously this car parking on the back boundary of the meadows is going to serve 2 dwellings, not 1, so there'd be at least 6 cars there, won't there? I suppose you could park lorries there if you wanted to. I don't know what the use of the land is supposed to be, but it is rather tight, and I'm also concerned about the streets, the apex look of the design in the street scene and the smallness of those bungalows beyond and behind. So I'll just say that for now.
Anybody else? Councillor Bisnowsing, please.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I am concerned exactly for similar reason, but my main concern is I know the Assistant Planning Director has just reassured me with regard to the permitted development right, but I say in the days that we are not going to be here, some of the 10 years, 20 years, somebody has come up and really decide to build it, and it goes ahead, and it's going to totally fill that size as it goes the problem. I know we have to consider it in the current state as it is now, but I think probably in the future, who is going to go and look, is there any condition being put in there? They put planning applications?
I think we can only base our decision on what's happening today and what's in the report, Harish. Councillor Crawford, please.
Well, according to that then, Harish, in 20 years' time, the dormer bungalow might be 3 stories.
Could well be.
So that's not really an argument, is it? For me, it's an infill. It's very eco-friendly. There are a lot smaller sites where things have been built on. At the minute, it's just an empty space. It's not being used. It could have a good use of giving a family home. I see the issues that people have brought up. For me, it's a mishmash of styles and designs. They're not all single-storey bungalows. You've got dormer bungalows, you've got houses that are 2-storey. It's a mishmash. Nothing's exactly the same. I would be quite happy to propose that we agree. Planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Anybody else like to join the debate? Or would somebody like to second Councillor Crawford's? Councillor Harrison, please.
While I sympathise that there is going to be a possibility of a slight loss of sunlight at certain times, I think what they're proposing will add to this area in far more than what we can see there at the moment. So I'd like to second it.
Okay, thank you. If nobody else has got... Councillor Whittington, please.
Yeah, I'm very torn on this one. I can see both sides of it, of the argument that's being presented here. I think my concerns probably slightly outweigh the advantages I see at the moment. So I'd probably tend to. I can see what both Councillor Crawford and Councillor Harrison are saying. I also see merging what Councillor Mills and Councillor Bisnassing are saying. I'm very, very torn on this one. This is a difficult one. So.
As Anna has said, it is a question of balance. So, anybody else got anything to say before we go to a vote? Emma, please.
Thank you. Obviously, I can predetermine the vote or anything, but I just wanted to come back on a couple of points just for you to think about before you do vote. Obviously, we've heard from Councillors Milnes and Bushnell saying that the concern about it being a small site. Think about the prevailing character of the area. There are small sites around. It's a complete mishmash of different site sizes in terms of garden spaces and how those properties fit into the streets and fit into those spaces. There is concern about parking. I think, just to clarify, I think it's the garden for, or certainly ancillary residential land for the host dwelling, which is number 54 Bainton Avenue, or Bainton Road. And in terms of the amount of parking, you know, it meets the relevant standards on there. In terms of the apex of the property, again, there is a mixture and a character in the area. It's not a conservation area. It's not surrounded by a list of buildings. So you'd need to think, if you were thinking on those lines, about the harm. What does it matter if you've got a mixture of different ridge heights and different roof designs? So it's about that harm to the character of the area. And then obviously we've controlled the PD rights, and I think as Councillor Bellamy's already pointed out, Councillor Crawford, sorry, that's a question for another day. So just leave you with those thoughts before you go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. So we've got a proposal to approve the application from Councillor Crawford, seconded by Councillor Harrison. So all those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against? Abstentions? So that is approved. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for a very good debate on that one. I think we gave that one a good grilling. And thank you, Anna. We move on to the next item on the agenda. Which is report, planning enforcement update. And I think, Matthew, you're going to give us an update on the status at the minute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members. Just whilst Matthew's setting up his short presentation, just to clarify that whilst it is an enforcement report, we're not talking about live cases. So if you've got any updates that you would like on any existing cases, live cases, we're happy to take questions after the meeting, but we may or may not know the answers because obviously we've got a lot of enforcement cases. So save those questions perhaps for afterwards. And Matthew's just here to talk about the contents of the report. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're asking questions just on the contents of the report. Then anything else we'll sort out after the meeting. Okay?
Press play, which, as I say, I will find hopefully in a minute. And then press play on here. Sorry, one moment, thank you. and source it out for me. So my name is Matthew Johnson. I'm the new Senior Planning Enforcement Officer. We started here in January of 2023, and I'm here to provide a certain update of the year so far, as well as sort of previous sort of enforcement action history of the council, which has been a bit empty, from my understanding, for some time. So what I'm here to do is explain, obviously, what our role is in the enforcement team, what we're here to do, what kind of powers we may take if we feel that that's expedient at the time, you know, what we try and do beforehand to possibly prevent formal action if we feel that that's really our last case of resort, and then how we work with other departments to hopefully provide the best result in any situation. So this is kind of a snapshot, as you can see on the screen, of what we generally deal with in the year of enforcement. So you can see until 2022, our last full year, we've had a general increase of planning enforcement cases. This is, from what I know, quite consistent between councils since lockdowns and all sorts of things. And we finished last year with a total of 309 enforcement cases. When this report was made, which was the 2nd of May, we were sitting on 94 cases, which would seem to push towards that trend of around 300 cases in a year. I've done a review of sort of our action over time, and one of our key factors in our planning enforcement policy is our response time in getting out to sites to, you know, make our assessment of whether a breach of planning control has occurred, and this kind of gives us an idea of when we have made that 10-day limit, which is part of our enforcement policy. As I'm sure you can see, we've had some difficulty arriving on site within our allotted 10 days, and you know, this is obviously a somewhat failing of our department, but since the start of the year in 2023, I feel we've made some great improvements in that, going from around an average of 33% of our sites visited within time up to around 87–88%. So hopefully we are showing improvements in this time. Following on from that, this is a snapshot of quite a large amount of cases that have been closed this year since January 2023, and I think shows quite an interesting balance of reasons cases are closed. So you can see by far we close the most cases on the reason no breach, which can either mean that development hasn't occurred, that the works are in accordance with approved plans, or are within the limits of permitted development, and that accounts for 43%. Following on from that, we have 25% where planning permission has been granted for the works, whether through negotiation by our team to get a plan application submitted, or, you know, works have been pre-commenced early and we've made sure it's been sorted out in prior time. Then following on from that, 17% have been remedied voluntarily, which is us negotiating either alterations to the works so that they come in line with sort of the policies and guidelines we have in place. I think that snapshot really shows quite how considerable a lot of this is action that is basically sorted out without any real formal pressure from us, and is either done through negotiation or just good investigation from the start to try and get it sorted out by the owner or developer themselves. Following on from that, we have a smaller snapshot. We currently have 3% in this time, which was closed due to immunity for enforcement action. I would say this is maybe slightly unusual, and is because we've been closing a lot of cases from the past sort of 2–3 years. But it's something that does happen because we don't always get our knowledge from the public quite as soon as we hope sometimes. After that, we have cases that are not expedient, once again probably quite high, but it's cases where we assess that although a breach has occurred, we've not been able to negotiate fully for the breach to be remedied voluntarily, and we've had to consider whether formal action would be expedient this time, which is generally done by us to see whether planning permission would likely be granted, and we carry on from there. And then finally, our last two are ones that are complied with notice, which is only 1%, which does show how rare it is really we have to serve notices, but that people do follow on from them at the end of the day. And then finally from that are just others, are examples of duplicate cases, you know, errors such as that, and how we go through from there. So following on from this, as far as the enforcement team, we currently have provision for 3 enforcement officers, a senior, which is myself, as well as 2 planning enforcement officers. We have a new enforcement officer starting on the 12th of June 2023. However, we also have our current enforcement officer leaving us on the 22nd of June. So unfortunately, we won't be getting to a full team as of yet. So we are currently, I believe, looking to recruit to fill that second position now, and hopefully getting an advert out soon for that. I think a nice number to see is that we've closed 213 cases since January, which is a very high number for around 5 months. And hopefully we can keep doing that to get our caseload down to something more reasonable than we are at this time. going on from that, I want to just highlight some of the more notable actions that have occurred since January, which include the services of notices and any other cases of note. So this seems to include one enforcement notice was served early in January for a breach of condition enforcement notice, and this was done by our officer Peter White. This is currently at enforcement appeal, and Peter is currently completing the report, and we're waiting for further correspondence from the planning inspectorate on that case there. We've had a case in Long Bennington regarding a gypsy traveller site, which had a temporary stop notice served to prevent further development at the time, and following that a further stop notice was served to prevent further development until the enforcement notice, which is due to reach the end of its compliance period at 30th September 23, comes into effect. Then after that, one high hedge notice has been served requiring the reduction of a hedge by 2 metres over the coming years. And after that, as I say, enforcement cases of note include the Land of Valley Lane, Long Bennington, which currently has the temporary stop notice and stop notice served, and we're closely monitoring that. We are aware there is a planning application in place for an attempt to regularise the change of use of the land. However, we're working with the planning team to monitor that and consider what formal action may be necessary in this time. As well as that, we have land adjacent to Marshall Way, Foston, which is another gypsy traveller site. The enforcement team have carried out recent visits to that land to assess any development that has occurred. We're aware that a second application has been submitted for a judgment by the planning team, and we're currently waiting for further details there, and we're once again keeping a keen eye on whether this application will be fully validated and contains enough information that we think requires full review. If not, we'll then consider what formal action will be necessary after that point. And then finally, as I said, 60 Conduit Road in Stamford, which currently has an enforcement appeal going on, being completed by our planning enforcement officer. So I just wanted to have a quick run through there to give you an idea of what we've done so far, and then sort of open up to any questions about the team and stats. And as said, this isn't really a place to ask about specific enforcement cases.
Any questions for Matthew, please, through the chair, please? This is just purely on the report, though. Like I say, if we've got any questions to ask regarding live cases and that, we'll have to save them till after the meeting. Councillor Bisnarson, please.
Also, Mr. Chairman, this is the very first good report of actually how the enforcement is being carried out, that we are still live and active, because people have been saying that we don't do anything. So I think that's seen to be done. But as you mentioned, I would, if it is possible, something been brought to my attention, in fact this morning, about Kesteven Road.
Yes, we could leave that till after we're just asking questions on the report, please.
Okay, thank you.
No? Any? Councillor Whittington, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm just looking at the graph, the number of cases closed per year on page 53. And obviously those highlighted in orange, they were the cases closed in 2022. So of those, some of them were 2020 cases. Just making sure I'm reading this right. So of that, some were 2020 cases, and some would have been 21 cases, some would have been 22 cases, but some would have been 23 cases. I'm not understanding because the orange says cases closed 2022, and yet 29 of those were in 2023. I'm having trouble understanding how the graph is working.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to explain that.
Could you just put your mic on, please, Matthew? Thank you.
So the cases closed by year is an indication of, in 2020, for example, we had a total of 244 enforcement cases come in. And of those 244 cases, 194 of those have been closed. So it shows that we currently have around 50 cases from 2020 still active. So it's more a case of knowing what we're working with by load each year. As it says below, we've closed, quite a considerable amount of cases this year. And it just so happens, at the date of this report, we've closed 29 of the 2023 cases of the 96 we'd received. So it's showing possibly, the years we've worked through and how much we've got to do for each year still.
So if I'm reading that right, we've closed 213 this year, and of that, 29 are this year's. So then I'm presuming the other 187 odd are cases that relate to previous years. Okay, so some of those will be the 2022, 2021 or 2020. I think what would be really useful would be an update on this, because this information is a bit out of date. And then I'm just trying to see going forward. I'm trying to get a feel for, have we still got any cases from say 2020 and 2021 still outstanding, and why would cases from 3-4 years ago still be outstanding? But it's difficult to read that by looking at the graph, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, thank you,
I just want some clarity around that.
Emma, please.
So I think, members, the intention is to bring a paper probably every quarter on updates, if members feel that that's an appropriate time. Could be every 6 months, but we're happy to do it every quarter. I think it's fair to say we've got some old cases on our books, old for all sorts of reasons. When you look at an enforcement case, in terms of the time it takes us to deal with it, sometimes that's like how long is a piece of string. The easy ones are the ones that come in that are clearly no breach, i.e. there's either the development's in accordance with the permission, what they're doing doesn't require consent. The other ones are the ones that the applicant deals with it, or the developer, the owner, deals with the issue quite quickly themselves voluntarily, or they'll put an application in for planning permission and regularise the situation. They're the quick ones. The ones that get drawn out and can take quite a lot of time are quite often the complex and challenging cases. Sometimes it's because there's lots of things going on that we need to monitor, need to deal with. Other times it might be that we're using it as a monitoring situation, and that really it's perhaps environmental health that are doing the enforcement, and we're just sat there in case we need to jump in. So it's difficult, but we do have a backlog. What Matthew's done since he started at the beginning of this year has made massive inroads into dealing with that backlog, and it's coming down. What you are now seeing are the difficult cases. That said, and we have served enforcement notices over the last year, but what Matthew's done since he started is we've had a stop notice, we've had some temporary stop notice, we've had some other enforcement notices. So I think you will start to see over the next 12 months that backlog coming down even further. We are, just to reassure you, it's not a great position to be in, but enforcement teams up and down the country have got similar issues. There's a real shortage of enforcement planners up and down the country. So we are not, by any stretch of the imagination, on our own having a backlog. But hopefully that clarifies the situation, that we will have backlogged cases on there.
Councillor Whittington, please.
That then goes into my second question, because I think Matthew said roughly at the moment it's about 70 cases per officer. So that would indicate roughly there's 210 outstanding, which probably looks about right. I mean, 70 sounds a lot. Because one of my questions was going to be how are we doing in comparison to other authorities. Would 70 be considered the optimum? Too many? Whatever. And what is the impact? Because obviously, as Matthew was saying, we've got an officer starting, an officer leaving, and I have heard rumours that planning enforcement officers are in short supply. So I'm just wondering again what the impact on recruitment and retention's also having on the caseload and how it's being divided up. Thanks.
Thank you. So there's no hard and fast rule in terms of officer caseloads. You will typically find that for an enforcement officer they sound high, but that's because sometimes a number of cases are still sat in their name, but there may be nothing happening with them. So for example, we've got one case where we've served an enforcement notice, it's at appeal, it's sat there, it's still in the officer's name, and there will be pieces of work that we need to do. The life of an enforcement officer is a bit different to a planning officer when they're dealing with planning applications, because you're constantly churn, trying to get your decisions out in 8 weeks. The priority for the enforcement officers is to do that initial site visit really quickly, to do that initial investigation. We then may have a period of time where we're doing some further research or investigation, or sending out to the applicant to ask them for information about what it is that they're doing. That means we're sat waiting for the applicant to respond. We then may need to chase that applicant up if they've not responded, and then you go into another period of waiting for several weeks. So you can start to see that we'll get queries that build up. In between that, we'll open and shut cases because they're quite quick to unpick and deal with, but the numbers are sort of building up. So I think we are under pressure, I think it's fair to say, but the numbers are always going to be higher for enforcement officers than they are for planning officers. I think in recruitment there is a shortage nationally. We've just done a series of a piece of recruitment for the wider planning team, and that did involve the enforcement team, and we interviewed and were really successful in just about all of our posts, including successfully bringing in a new person to that team, and there was another candidate that was potentially successful as well, but unfortunately they've taken another opportunity and it didn't quite line up, hence we're going to have to go out to recruitment. So I'm really hopeful that we will successfully recruit again. But I think really we're doing lots of good stuff. Sending out some of these key messages, serving a stop notice is a really good thing to do, because it sends out that message to the developers. You can't just do what you want to do. But you do need to be mindful that when we do enforcement, we do need to give the owner the opportunity to voluntarily resolve matters. So it may look like we're not doing a lot. We are busy trying to resolve things in the background, and we can't just launch from, we've got a case, it doesn't have permission, here's your notice. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that either. So we will do, by the way, a session on enforcement training, a bite-sized session later on, and I think Matthew perhaps wants to jump in.
Just let Matthew speak. Mark, please. Matthew.
So just to follow on from that point as well, on 5.5, which you're referring to, there's also 5.4 previously. So 70 cases is my hopeful target for the future for enforcement officers to have. We have a caseload currently higher than that. I know both me and Peter White are sitting around 130, 140 cases each, which is tough, is how to describe it. We do have a contractor who is due to end his contract soon, which was to line up with our new recruit who was dealing with some cases as well. So we do have a very high workload, but what we've done so far is really squeeze that number down. And although, we're not out of the woods yet, the hope is by hopefully January 2024, things will be looking a lot rosier, and we can, provide a better service, because we're not drawn here, there and everywhere trying to deal with too many things at once.
Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, so I think that would be useful to have some training around enforcement, because I'm new on the planning committee. So I see this report. I'm just asking questions just to try to understand what's going on. But I think a training session would be really useful.
Councillor Dilks, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Can I just sort of say, as cabinet member for planning, new cabinet member for planning, I really welcome the progress that's been reported over recent months, and look forward to further progress that Emma referred to with the difficult cases. I think we'd all agree that enforcement has been a difficult subject in the past for us as members of the planning committee. I think, there's no doubt it's been sort of, I'm not saying it's been neglected, but certainly under-resourced in the recent past, and I understand that that's may well be a national issue. I think it's right to bring it today to a report, and I really welcome the fact that it's going to come back for scrutiny by the planning committee, on a quarterly basis. Regarding the sort of size of the team, my first question would be: is there any prospect or opportunity for in-house training of an enforcement officer? Perhaps it's just sort of worth sort of looking at, particularly if we're still one down and we can't get anyone to do it. And moving on to my questions, I had two questions really, and they are: what proportion of the complaints, if I might call them that, come from councillors? And secondly, what's the sort of process of communication with the complainant, and how do they, do we stay in touch with them, telling them progress throughout the, hopefully 70 days and not the 4 years. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So as far as keep communication, as far as what enforcement goes, is once we've completed our initial site visit, we usually have 10 days after that site visit to basically make first contact with the inquirer to make them aware of what we've assessed. If there is a breach of control, if there's not, we'll obviously mostly say that we've not found anything, we'll be closing this case. But after that, there is no sort of part of our planning enforcement policy that requires further updates. It is the case, however, that most officers will obviously make them aware once the case is closed, which, as I say, could be days, could be years in the worst case, very unusual, but, can't discount that. And, it is up to us to, provide updates when we think is necessary. I know, for example, I have cases where I'm providing updates every few days for some because things are changing quickly and we need to just make sure we keep everyone aware. Where some, you just go, I've not talked to someone for 2-3 months because we're either waiting for a planning application decision or we've just got nothing going on. And although I'm sure people want to be kept as informed as possible, saying the same thing over and over isn't always the best use of an officer's time, so we just have to be mindful of that and do the best we can. As far as enforcement cases that come in through councillors, I don't have a particular stat for what percentage of inquiries are made through councillors alone, but I can certainly find that out for you.
Can you put your mic on, Phil, please?
Oh, sorry, I thought I'd pressed it. Thank you, Helen. And the other thing I just wanted to seek clarification on was when people do make an inquiry about enforcement, are they, is that anonymous, and do they remain anonymous? Is there any doubt? I just wonder, a lot of these things will be neighbour complaining about neighbour, and, people may be reluctant to sort of do that if they think there's an opportunity, that they're going to be blamed and that they'll get, it will cause further conflict with their neighbours. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back on that one. We won't accept anonymous complaints. We always want to know who the complainant is. We partly need to understand the impact on that person when we're considering the expediency or the appropriateness of serving or taking any enforcement action. However, we keep the details of the complainant confidential, so they do not get released. It's a need-to-know basis. So it's confined to the planning team, basically, in our database, and it would not be disclosed to the owner, to the developer. We would never disclose who the complainant was. And it's also protected under things like FOI, freedom of information and environmental information regulations, as well as personal data. So they won't hear from us who the complainant is, but we need to know who the complainant is. Thank you.
Thanks for that reassurance.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the report? I'd just like to say that I think we're probably certainly in a better position now than the last time that we had a report come to, a comprehensive report anyway, which was probably a couple of years, I think it's probably a couple of years ago. Certainly the maximum, the case, the amount of outstanding cases has certainly come down. And so, like I say, we are definitely in a better position, and obviously we've got more people on the team as well, so that the resources issues sort of been resolved or improved, even if it is a bit of a moving object because there's people coming and going all the time. But I definitely welcome the report, and I'd like to thank everybody that's involved in it. Councillor Milnes, please.
Yes, thank you. It's sort of a circle, isn't it, really? We want to put the message out there, reinforce the message that we don't accept breaches of planning permissions or breaches of anything. I was just wondering how long it takes to re-employ an enforcement officer if somebody's leaving and we have to look for somebody else, what that time gap is where we're coping short-staffed, and also Is there a funding issue with it? If we need a bigger team, is there a funding issue to that? What is the reason we can't have a bigger team, for example?
I think Nicola just wanted to... Nicola?
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak. So I'm Nicola McCoy-Brown, I'm the Director for Growth and Culture. So the work of the team falls under my responsibility. We're moving dangerously into the operational side of things, and your role is not to look at the staffing side of things. However, I do hear you, and I want to reassure you that as an organisation we take the staffing very, very seriously indeed, and we're trying our level best to make it an environment where people want to work and flourish here at South Kesteven. So whilst I hear you, we're on it. We actively encourage growing our own, and the planning team, as far as I'm concerned, from somebody who's got 30 years experience of working in local government, it's almost second to none in terms of our approach on how we've actually grown our own. And we've got examples even in the room now of people that started off and have developed enormously through their career here at South Kesteven. So whilst we recognise it's a challenge, Emma's eloquently said how difficult it is in terms of the recruitment environment that we've got. Do you know what? That's not just with planning, that's across lots of different disciplines and sectors. Hospitality, you name it, are all struggling. So we're on it, but I don't want this to be what you concentrate on, because your role is slightly different to that. So if you can leave us to worry about that bit, and you worry about actually the policy and driving things forward, would be enormously helpful.
Thank you, Nicola. Emma, did you want to come back on that?
No, Nicola beat me to it. Thank you.
I think what we'll do now is there isn't any other business, so we'll close the meeting now, and then we can, if there's any other questions to Matthew after that, we can ask them. So at 14:23, I believe it is, hours, we'll close the meeting.